Hi, good afternoon. My name is Diana. I'm from Colombia. I've been vegan for the last 6 years and a half. And the main reason I'm vegan is because of the animals. I think animals deserve better than this. They have been exploited and murdered just because of the flavor of their bodies. And I think that's not fair. It's about compassion, it's about kindness, it's about justice. This is the minimum that we can do for them. Like, be outside, speak up for them, and just keep doing it. Keep fighting for them, for their rights. They want to live just like you and just like me. They want to enjoy their lives. We have to let them do what they want with their lives and just enjoy life. That's the biggest problem of all of this, like speciesism. Specism, yeah, because like we think one species is better than other one. That's not right. We all are living in this planet and this is our house. Animals are not here for us, they are with us. We need the protein, that's pretty sure, right? And we can find it in legumes like lentils, beans, quinoa. There's a lot of resources that you can get your protein, and even now you can find a lot of substitutions for meat. Like there's a lot of brands making very good stuff like Beyond Burgers and all that. There's not an excuse for keep getting protein from an animal if you can get it from a vegetable. If you're gonna eat broccoli, you're gonna get protein. You can get calcium too. You need both.
Hey, I'm John, coming to you from Washington Square Park today. Just want to give you some background on who I am and why I am who I am. I was fortunate enough to meet my wife in New Paltz when we went to college together back in the 80s, and she was a vegetarian. And she turned me into a vegetarian. So for probably 30 years, we were vegetarians. Unfortunately, we did not know about the horrors of the dairy industry. Thankfully, we found out the information that was necessary to get us to finally become vegan. And what that means is we do not consume any animal products of any kind, nor do we wear anything that is derived from animals. Every day we wake up and we feel so wonderful that we no longer participate in the horrors of the industries that these particular industries, and in most cases the government, doesn't want us to know about. So we are out here today trying to educate people about all the things that we are now aware of, and we live our lives every minute of every day by, and that's being vegan. Here we have people wearing screens. We're doing what's known as outreach. Basically, these screens are showing footage, behind-the-scenes footage of, like I said, what the government and industry does not want us knowing or seeing. So the industries are meat and dairy, and fish, seafood as well. Anyone willing to listen to us discuss what they're looking at on the screens is going to be educated in terms of where their food comes from and the horrors that go into producing the product that we are taught since birth to believe that we need to consume in order to live and wake up the next day. And we're living proof that that's not necessary. You do not need animals or any animal products to be a human being today and be healthy and live a long, happy life. And I let eggs fall into the dairy category. It's probably as violent, if not more, than the meat industry. So we have cows that produce milk, and they are abused to produce a product that's not meant for us, yet we take and we use for money. But the egg industry, egg-laying hens, chickens, are confined to a life of torture to produce, once again, product that we are led to believe that we should take from them and consume, when in essence we have no right utilizing what was not meant for us. And again, we're showing footage of cage-free, free-range, all the catchphrases that industry comes up with to make us believe that we're doing something in a nicer, more pleasant way and a healthier way, when in essence it's just as brutal as everything else. And we have the truth on these screens, and we're trying to show people. Pigs are clipped early on with no anesthesia. The males are basically discarded. They become the chicken nuggets and the waste that goes into animal food and dog food and whatever else byproducts are consumed. And again, time after time after time, we just steal eggs from living beings who we have no right taking from to begin with, let alone consuming. It's just absolutely brutal and horrible and ultimately murderous. And we as a human race are just so terrible to other living beings and other species just because they're not like us. And we should be more compassionate and more open-minded. I'm asked quite a bit, so where do you get your protein? Where do you get your nutrition if you don't eat animals? And I really give what I call dumbed-down version of what could be a very long-winded answer. If we eat what animals eat to get their protein, then we get our protein. So basically that's plants. We have no reason to consume what was living being or byproducts from that living being to receive any nutrients or protein in order for us to live a happy, healthy, normal life. And there are so many alternatives to meat and dairy now that you don't even have to go to a traditional health food store or organic store to get these products. You can go to any supermarket, and every single supermarket I've ever been to recently always has an area that has the tofu, the nut milks, the oat milks, everything that we consume, that meat eaters consume. It's just simply a cruelty-free and more natural product that is an alternative, and people just need to be aware of it and be willing to try to do something different. So how did it all start? What made us believe that we should be eating animals and consuming products like this, meat, dairy, and so on? Listen, there might have been a time thousands of years ago, for survival purposes, there was no alternative, and somehow, some way, cavemen or whomever just needed to kill other beings in order to survive. We don't live in that situation. I will argue until I'm blue in the face and passed out on the floor that there's no rationale behind saying we need to live like people did 3,000 years ago. We have come forward tremendously, and we do not need to consume any kind of animal product or derivatives from animals in order to survive. It's such a misnomer, it's misinformation, and people just need to open up their minds. And granted, I will admit, from birth, we are taught that this is the way we're supposed to live and sit down to the table and consume food. But we need to step out of that and understand that there are alternatives, there are safer alternatives, more compassionate alternatives, more environmentally friendly alternatives, and it is incumbent upon all of us to at least consider those alternatives. Ultimately, it's up to the individual to make the choice and make that decision, but I know I am on the right side of history. When I am no longer here to talk and reach out to people, I know I've done my job. I've done my best to be a good human being and take care of this planet and other living beings as best I can.
My name is Yara, and I went vegan in 1988 when I was a teenager because I was horrified about the animal cruelty. And later on, I learned the impacts on the environment and how it is hurting all of us. And then when I got older, when I was 38 years old, I learned that hurts our health. And now I'm 48 years old, and I learned more about the environment and more about animal cruelty and more about the ethics and the climate change and pandemics. So this is very important, and it's very important to be vegan for all of us, not only for animals. I first went vegetarian in Brazil, where I was born. Then I went vegan when I was a teenager. I was living in Brazil, and then I was back and forth in the United States. Vegan is a journey of learning. I'm 48, I'm healthy, and that's the way to be. That's the path to a peace world. Peaceful.
My name's Marilyn, and I became vegan about 7 years ago. And before that, I stopped eating meat when I was 14. But I continued to eat dairy and eggs, not understanding the harm I was causing, not understanding how horrific those industries were. I believe that only meat really caused death. I've since learned that that's far from the truth. It was an article in the New York Times that prompted me to change. There was an article by Michael Moss. It was an expose in the New York Times about the meat laboratories in Nebraska, funded by the USDA, where they experiment on animals to produce more plentiful and less expensive meat and dairy products, and the most horrific experiments with no oversight that you could ever imagine. And at the time, there was an outcry from the public. Even Cory Booker tried to write an addendum to the Animal Welfare Act to include farm animals after reading this expose, which went nowhere. I, at the time, called every news media outlet I could think of and every governmental agency I could think of to talk about what's going to be done about this. Someone put me in touch with a group called Karuna for Animals. Karuna, which is Sanskrit for compassion. I called the woman in charge of this group. First thing she asked me is, "Are you vegan?" And I said to her, "Well, I'm vegan-ish." And she said to me, "Until you make the connection that you buy," and it all shifted in my head, all the gears clicked, and I said, "Wow, I can't believe I had the audacity to get upset about what I read when I'm actually part of the problem. I'm actually supporting it." It all shifted. We went to, my husband, daughter, and I went to a meeting for Karuna for Animals, and we've been vegan ever since. Around the same year, my husband, he had taken a real liking to pigs and wanted to spend his birthday with pigs, so we made plans to go up to Catskill Animal Sanctuary, and I don't really remember which came first, the meeting for Karuna or the visit to Catskill Animal Sanctuary, but being with the animals and being with them firsthand really sealed the deal. Of course, once you get involved in this lifestyle, you're exposed to more information, you're barraged with more information, and the more you find out, the more horrific it is, and the more you want to speak up. You not only want to speak up, you're compelled to speak up. You have a responsibility to speak up for the animals. And I don't like to say they're voiceless, because we all know they have voices, but they're just not being listened to. They're screaming behind the walls, and their screams are going unheard. Not unheard, unlistened to, ignored. It's our imperative to make sure they're heard. I always had pets. I love them as much as any other family member. There's no difference between these animals that are being tortured and eaten or worn and the ones that I love and care for. When I see the fur trim on coats, a fur trim around a collar, it's absolutely so appalling. People think that I don't understand the reasoning, but apparently they must think that there's no suffering, pain, agony involved just because it's a small part of their garment. A fur trim around a collar is equal to so much agony and suffering. And if it's the fur from just one pelt of one animal, that animal suffered in pain and agony and fear, literally tortured for, who knows if she or he stayed in that trap for days, starved to death, dehydrated to death, or was beaten to death, clubbed to death. People are also unaware of trash animals. I don't remember the statistic, but I think it's maybe 1 out of every 4 animals caught in a trap is actually usable. The other 3 might be squirrels, pets, cats, dogs, birds, that are just thrown away, considered trash. So for every usable pelt, there are 3 that are unusable. So for every heinous trap out there, there are 4 animals that suffered horrifically. And those are just wild-caught animals who suffer a horrible death. Animals who are raised for their fur suffer every moment of their lives in tiny, tiny, filthy cages, unable to have any normal instinctual behaviors. Mink, who are water animals, are never allowed to go into the water. No animals have any kind of bedding. No animals are allowed to nurse their young. No animals are allowed to live in dens with others. No stimulation, no natural foods that they would eat. And then those poor animals are gassed or beaten to death, or their necks are wrung. There's no mercy. The minks are generally gassed to death. When they open up the gas chamber, and if there are some still alive, they're usually taken out and their necks are wrung, or they're slammed against the ground and beaten to death. Foxes are killed through anal electrocution. They're carted into the chamber where their mouths are clamped and an electric rod is shoved up their anus, and they're electrocuted anally, sometimes vaginally. It's just horrific. Sometimes they're not fully dead before they start to skin them, and they're skinned alive. There's no excuse to ever wear fur, ever, ever. It doesn't matter if it's trim or coat or a jacket or a hat or a pom-pom. It's no more acceptable than wearing human skin made into anything. It's not okay. Just not okay. Not okay. Talk about down for a moment. Down is kind of like it's hidden behind fabrics. People don't notice the down, the feathers, and where feathers come from. Feathers that are used for down coats are plucked from live animals. It's like being plucked alive. Can you imagine? If someone yanks one hair out of your head, you feel the pain. We wince when we see someone just plucking their eyebrows. The feeling of one hair being plucked. Can you imagine your entire body being plucked? And in order to be plucked, the body needs to be stretched taut. And so to pluck angora from a rabbit or feathers from a bird, they're stretched out, held down, and plucked alive, leaving blood, scabs, wounds. Just absolutely horrific, just merciless. Some do stay alive, some survive it. Their feathers will grow back, their fur will grow back, and it will be done to them again. They know that the human is the devil. And when people come near, they crowd into the corner on top of each other. They pile on top of each other to escape the humans, to get away from them, to get as far as they can, because they've been through it once and they don't want to go through it again. Others die from the infections that it causes and the wounds, and they're just left to die. No need to use and abuse animals. We have alternatives. We have natural plant alternatives to everything. We have all kinds of fibers, warm fibers, durable fibers, delicious foods, plentiful foods, nutritious foods. There's no justification at all to use animals for anything. We are here to do outreach and to speak for the animals and to expose these industries for what they are. These industries are protected by agricultural gag laws prohibiting the truth from being told. The Animal Welfare Act excludes animals raised for food or clothing from protection by law, so they suffer behind closed walls. And only people who go in, brave people who go in and infiltrate these industries and take undercover footage to expose it. And we're here to expose that footage, to show it to people. This is what really goes on. And we owe it to the animals. And I'm cold and I'm uncomfortable, and I just think about, would I want someone to do it for me? People, we learn the golden rule, and every religion has a version of the golden rule. Every single religion on earth has a version of the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have done to yourself. All you need to know when you make a decision, should I use this animal product or not? Would you want someone to do that to you? Would you want someone to do that to someone you loved or cared for? Would you want someone to speak up for you? Would you want someone to show what was being done to you? It's so simple. It's very, very simple. So simple. It's such a simple, basic message. That's sometimes the hardest part to believe. I know, it's basic. Didn't they learn when they were little? It's so basic. I don't want to just blame it on money and commercialism and profit, because something happened first. You know, when people talk to me when I'm doing outreach about hunting, I make an analogy with housing. And when pioneers were exploring the country and they were in the Midwest and there was no timber, they made homes from dung, the cow dung or horse dung or sod. They would stack up pieces of sod to create houses, and in places where there was clay, they would make brick. And people were very resourceful and used what they had, and they were able to survive cave dwellings or whatever they had. And once upon a time, if there was nothing other than other animals, I can understand that they ate animals or they fished. But that's not the case anymore. That's not the case anymore. It's not a matter of survival. It's not a lack of options. It's not for necessity. I don't know. Just don't know. I question it all the time. I just don't know. I'm not a religious person, and whatever God means to you, and I'll use the word God loosely, God is looking down, must be looking down on us and saying, I gave you all of these beautiful plants that come right out of the earth for you. Trees that drop apples and carrots under the soil and grains and nuts and beans. Look what you're doing. What the hell are you doing? You're killing each other. You're torturing each other. What the hell are you doing? I also look at, my house is not powered by solar right now, so I hesitate to make this analogy, but I also look at the sun and the sky and the way we kill for oil and destroy the world, the earth by fracking. And if there is a God looking down saying, I gave you this giant ball of energy, and look what you're doing. Look what you're doing! You have everything you need in nature. It's there for you. And you're choosing this violent, destructive way. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Animal agriculture is destroying the world, using up our natural resources, our water, our land. I'm sorry, I see a Canada Goose truck car getting by.
Yeah, we're here just educating people.
With the children. Should have said something about teaching compassion, but... Alright. Animal agri-torture. It's destroying the world. It's destroying the world. I don't know the numbers, and I kind of wish I should memorize the numbers, but the amount of land that's necessary to create animal protein versus plant protein is so disproportionate, and I don't know the numbers, but we could grow so much more plant protein on the same amount of land we use for animal protein. So much less water, kill so many fewer trees. We need the Amazon rainforest, which is being destroyed, to graze more cattle and to grow grain to feed more cattle. It's so perverse to feed into a system that is so destructive and so cruel and so inhumane, and then ultimately even more unhealthful. Even if every other aspect could be justified, in the end you're killing yourself. Every major medical organization recommends a plant-based diet, that's what they call it. The Heart Association, the Lung Association, diseases such as diabetes, type 2 diabetes, many kinds of cancers, cardiovascular disease, asthma, obviously lactose intolerance, which is a make-believe thing, obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension. These are meat and dairy diseases. Recently, a friend told me she was diagnosed with colon cancer, so the first thing I did was look up the worst foods for colon cancer and the best foods for colon cancer. Obviously, the worst foods are meat and dairy. The best foods are plants. The principal of my school just announced that he has fatty liver disease, and I researched what are the worst foods for fatty liver disease and the best foods for fatty liver disease. Of course, advocates a plant-based diet. Most of the students in my school have individualized educational plans. I joined the nutrition committee in my school. and researched what is the most common medical condition of the students who have IEPs, and it's asthma. So I looked up what is the worst food for asthma. It's egg and dairy. And so then I tried to advocate, please, let's stop feeding these kids egg and dairy. Nobody wants to hear it. Every medical condition that you could think of can be treated or reversed by nutrition with a focus on a plant-based diet. And that's only the gravy. That's just the cherry on top. You also won't be supporting torture and abuse. You'll be an environmentalist helping to save the world, and you'll also be helping yourself. There's no downside to going vegan. There is no downside to going vegan. There is no deprivation. People think you'll miss your favorite foods. There are vegan alternatives to every food. Do you want vegan pizza? Do you want vegan cupcakes? Do you want vegan cheese? You can find everything. It just takes trying the few until you find the one you like best. We're just so used to reaching for the same thing over and over again. It's such an easy switch. So easy. So easy. And once you learn what goes on, what happens, what's done to the animals, it's your moral obligation. It's your moral obligation to speak up. If you remain silent, you're complicit. I believe that. This is what happened in the Holocaust, and it's a touchy subject. Some people don't like to bring that up, but it's really the same thing, and I'm Jewish. Same thing's going on today that was going on then, and those of us who know are trying desperately to let others know. People don't want to hear it. It's your moral obligation to speak for those who are being oppressed. I know when I get into bed at night, my head's floating with the images that I've seen throughout the day, so when I get into bed at night, I also don't feel like I need to read books like that. I'm already there. I allow myself not to watch, and I allow myself not to read. I'm not in denial. I won't ever go back to using animals again.